Hey, what is up, guys? Welcome back to Kyle's Gaming. It's your boy Kyle, and in today's video, guys, we are going to be going over the Maid of Sker review. Now that I have finished the game, it's time to look back at some of the things that definitely did work, and some of the things good lord, and some of the things that definitely did not work. Hopefully this isn't going to take any more than maybe 15-20 minutes or anything like that, so definitely trying to keep it short, just like my last one. In fact, if you did enjoy my last review that I did on Destiny 2, you should definitely enjoy this one, as I will be going in depth on each and every category. So here we go. So here we are going to be looking at 5 categories. We've got the enemies, the jump scares, the survival aspects like weapon, medicine, and everything else, the overall atmosphere and gameplay, and of course, the story. Now each category will receive an in-depth analysis, and afterwards I will give it a score that I think it deserves, which will be between 1 and 5, bringing the total number of possible points to 25. Now remember, just like last time, there's not going to be any like 2.8, 1.1, anything like that. It's either going to be a whole number like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or you may see 1.5, 2.5, 3.5, stuff like that. But I'm not going to do anything else other than those. Now, whether or not it ends up deserving it right off the bat, I can't say for sure, but I will say that it is somewhat likely. And that's all I'm going to say about it. Now remember, this is just my own personal opinion, and if you haven't watched the videos or played the game yourself, then this is your official spoiler warning. Let's get right into it. So here we are starting off with the enemies category, and I just have one thing to say. Wow! Honestly, to the people of Wales Interactive, I gotta say, I'm impressed with you. I mean, you managed to do so much with so little.
That's what she said.
Good one, Michael. But no, seriously, I'm honestly rather shocked. I mean, this isn't exactly the first time that a horror game has used enemies that are attracted to sound. For example, the necromorph from Alien Isolation. I think that was one of them. However, this does seem to be one of the few games that utilizes enemies that entirely are based on sound, due to not being able to see. And this ended up making them even more of a challenge to avoid, especially with like creaking boards around the map. I mean, even walking instead of crouching could have dire consequences. Now this also makes traversing the hallways in the maze of the garden a lot more difficult. Now along with this, there are areas with smoke and areas where there's some kind of purple gas that can damage your health if you breathe it in. This means that there are parts where you can't even breathe for short periods of time. But be mindful of the screen, as it will grow darker the more you hold your breath, and if you don't time it right, you might end up exhaling right next to an enemy and die. Speaking from personal experience on that one. Anywho, having enemies that go entirely based on sound really made the game take longer, which I honestly think should be left more to the story. I just don't think that it's a good idea to have most of your gameplay consist of practically crawling to each of your destinations. This turns a game that, if you were able to go normal speed, would only take a couple of hours, into a game that takes twice or 3 times as long. For that, I can only give it a 4.5 out of 5. Now, I would give it a 3.4 or a 4 out of 5, but there is just one thing that saves it from a lower score. The bosses. Both Isaac and Abraham add some much needed difficulty in the enemies. Abraham being the big guy that I guess took Mr. X's class on how to be a horror game boss, and Isaac, who learned how to be a magician as he manages to appear and disappear with ease. Now, what would a horror game be without at least a few jump scares here and there to really put the horror in horror genre? And horror game. And survival horror. That's 3. Anyways, the jump scares may not exactly be very large in number, but boy did they make an impact. I mean, all you have to do is watch the series to see how I reacted to each and every one of them. And trust me, when you have an enemy suddenly crash through the wall or screech right in your face when you're least expecting it, you are liable to shit yourself. Now, luckily, none of them were all that scary for me. The best thing about the jump scares in this game is the fact that they were really well spread out across the entire game. I mean, each and every 20 to 30 minute section had at least one jump scare to show you exactly what kind of game you were playing. And most games tend to rely somewhat heavily on jump scares at the beginning of the game and leave the rest of the game to the atmosphere and the fighting for survival. I mean, take Resident Evil 7 Biohazard for example. Now yes, it is my favorite horror game and probably my favorite game of all time as of right now, but the one thing that I would say that I can't stand about it is the fact that they use all of their good jump scares in the very beginning and only like a few of them in the middle. Now that's okay, but the thing people love about playing these games as well as watching YouTubers play them is seeing the reactions to the jump scares throughout the game. And even though it did seem like Maid of Sker used most of its best jump scares at the beginning and the middle of the game, there still were some good ones spread throughout the rest to make it more than deserving of a 5 out of 5. And if any future game needs a lesson on how to spread out their jump scares to make it a more frightening experience, then they need not look any further than Maid of Sker. Fact. Everyone knows that the only way to play a survival horror game is to have ways of surviving the horror. And what better way to do this than with pistols, shotguns, knives, chainsaws, and... Oh, right. This game doesn't have any of that. Okay, what I meant to say was, what better way to do so than with a little metal sphere that somehow only affects the enemies and not you? I don't know, maybe I'm just one of those guys that feels a lot better when the enemies are actually dead. Because believe me, if Thomas had a revolver or a double barrel shotgun or something, he wouldn't have to worry about traversing the halls and being quiet. He could literally just go back to kicking ass, taking names, and chewing bubblegum before running out just before saying this cool line, but that wouldn't mean anything to him until he's long since passed on. Basically what I'm saying is that there was a point in the game where I reached the end only to find out that I missed 3 of the 4 cylinders and one of the music sheets needed to unlock both the potential endings of the game. Therefore, I had to backtrack all without my sonic resonator because it broke when I got pushed down a hole in the attic and ended up in the basement. If I was able to kill the enemies, I wouldn't have had to worry about doing 2 hours worth of backtracking all without anything to be able to defend myself with. I mean, all I could do was somehow manage not to overdose on bottles of medicine and hold my breath like I'm trying to win a contest. All in all, I have to say that the couple of things I did really like about this section is the fact that the sonic resonator, ammunition, and medicine were in great supply for newcomers on the easy mode and shorter supply for seasoned players on medium. Now, I would not at all recommend hard mode as it's basically the Resident Evil 7 Madhouse difficulty for Maid of Sker. Nor would I recommend safe mode because it's literally just for sightseeing. No enemies, no death, just the story. Easy and medium difficulty give a nice balance of difficulty in surviving the game for each type of player that chooses to partake in it. The other great thing is how each map gives you a detailed layout of each room, the doors, and even where the objects you need to progress are. The only small problem is that instead of having a hug or something like most games, you have to pretty much rely on the map, but then again, that does add a lot more realism to the situation your character is in. Plus, it allows you to map out the direction you're going to take and get to the next section. And if there will be enemies around there or not. All in all, I have to give this section a 4.5 out of 5. I mean, the only thing that keeps it from receiving a 5 is just the fact that sometimes it can be rather unclear where you're supposed to go, which can lead to a lot of backtracking, like I said before. And eventually you have to become reliant on the map because of how many different doors, hallways, and ventilation ducts there are to travel through and reach your destination. Now, pulling a little from what I said earlier, the overall atmosphere of Sker Hotel, each floor you traverse, and even the garden all add a lot of fear or even just some uneasiness when going through each section. I mean, obviously, the jump scares wouldn't really be very scary if it wasn't a horrifying atmosphere. I mean, that's like a baker trying to bake a cake without an oven that's even on. And even when you first arrive on Sker Island, you already sort of get a feel for what's in store for you by reading the wooden signs that talk about the grand reopening of Sker Hotel. And the best part about all of it is how it never feels stale or repetitive. Well, unless you're stuck and you're having trouble figuring out where to go and you have to walk around the same area multiple times. But then again, that's on you, not the game. Now, for the overall gameplay itself, the graphics do really well for the gameplay, and while it's not exactly streamlined like a lot of these new games coming out on the next-gen consoles, it does feel like a really good current-generation game. The gameplay is also really basic and doesn't take a whole lot of getting used to, as you really don't carry a lot, and even each button has its own action. So there's no chance of you going into the inventory and pausing the game by doing so. I mean, honestly, I always feel kind of split about stuff like that. I mean, on the one hand, whenever it pauses when you're looking at the inventory or maps and stuff, it does help to potentially not die right away. But then again, it's not like all the enemies will suddenly freeze if you pull up your map, because, well, then you could essentially just hold the map out in front of you and walk around the map plugging the cylinders as you go and never die. This section I have to give a 4 out of 5. Now, yes, I know I literally just said, the graphics and everything were really good, but to be honest, they could have been better. Don't get me wrong, they are really good. 2020, it's been a really good year for games like, Spider-Man Miles Morales and Resident Evil 3 remake and stuff like that, but you gotta look at it this way. It has the same graphics as like Resident Evil 7, and that came out 3 years ago. I mean, it's not ugly, but it still could have been better, and Wells Interactive apparently just couldn't go the extra mile to make it happen. Now, saving the best and what is probably going to take the longest for last, we have the story. Now, this one is somewhat of a doozy and might be a bit confusing if you don't watch the videos as I did or any of the explanation videos, so I'll do my best to make it really quick, and I'm sorry if it ends up taking a little longer than some of the other sections, okay? But I honestly feel that this is necessary so you can kind of get a feel for the game itself. Okay, so in 1874, there's this dude named Jebediah who lives on Sker Island with his 2 sons, Abraham, the big guy from the second floor, and Isaac, the skinny guy with the cane. Isaac marries Prudence, and the 2 of them have a daughter named Elizabeth, as well as a dog named Calliope. Now, due to distortion, after Jebediah has his men put out the beacon, a ship ends up crashing into Sker Island. Now, the ship ended up having a lot of treasure on it, as well as a siren. And no, I don't mean anything like half woman, half fish, or anything like that. It's half bird, half woman. And its song causes distortion of the mind and basically is a sort of mind control. So Jebediah decided to use the money to open Sker Hotel and keep the siren within the caverns of the island. He also had his daughter-in-law Prudence learn the song, which he put into a recording cylinder so that she could play them on gramophones and learn the song easier. Jebediah decided then to use the siren to lure ships to Sker Island and take their riches so he could constantly put money into Sker Hotel, and then used Prudence to lure the people from the ships into Sker Hotel, which he built using the money from the ships. Okay, and Jebediah decided to split the song into 4 fragments in order to control the effects more easily. And that's just 1 year. In 1875, Jebediah founds the cult, the Quiet Ones, to turn the victims of the song into slaves and servants for the family. They were sent to the ritual of rebirth to destroy their face, thereby leaving them unable to speak or see, but still able to hear. The cult made Prudence their first priestess. In 1894, Prudence dies, making Elizabeth the next Maid of Sker, so Abraham and Isaac have Elizabeth learn the song. The hotel closes due to Prudence's death because she was the original Maid of Sker, and they need time for Elizabeth to learn the song and get better at it and everything. In 1897, Elizabeth reads Jebediah's diary and learns of the family's conspiracy, so she refuses to sing anymore, so she split the song into 4 sections and sent each one of the 4 to different composers. Thomas Evans, that's you, the other 3 being Matilda Norton, Arthur Morse, and Henry Hughes. On the 3rd and 7th of October of the same year, Arthur and Matilda were killed inside the hotel. Henry Hughes, on the other hand, the fat crying guy you hear throughout the game, is turned into one of them. Now on October 20th, Elizabeth writes her letter to Thomas asking for his help. 2 days later, Isaac discovered Elizabeth's plan for the counter song, so he planned to release the song sooner at rehearsal with the staffs. So she had to agree to sing for her father in order to stop his evil plan. Now, since the song had not yet been complete, the counter song that she was working on to counteract the effects of the siren, because it wasn't complete, it caused everybody in the hotel to go mad. Even her father bled from his ears and became unhinged, and this forever ruined Sker Hotel. On October the 25th, Elizabeth ends up seeing the siren and begins losing her mind. She continued to lose her mind ever since this happened. In 1898, Thomas arrives at Sker Hotel, and here we are back at the present. Now, here's what I think for the 2 endings. By playing the counter song yourself with the organ and Elizabeth singing, she is free from the curse and is able to immobilize her family and the servants. Now this is the good ending, and the good ending makes it seem as though the curse is broken and the siren is free, and therefore no more ships will be lured to Sker Hotel, and therefore no one else will be turned into quiet ones, and Sker will close forever, allowing everyone to be free from the curse of the song. Now by giving her the cylinders, she shows her true colors and tells you that there will be a place in the hotel for you as she begins singing the siren song and taking over your mind as well. The bad ending makes it seem that due to Elizabeth seeing the siren and going mad, she decides to take the hotel herself and kill the siren, as her song is actually more powerful than that of the siren, as it was her version of the song that made everyone go mad in the first place. In fact, it was actually her song that made her father and uncle burn their own faces and join the ranks of the quiet ones. Therefore, she will draw in both the ships and the victims and continue Sker Hotel for as long as possible, keeping the purse alive along with it. Oh my god. My throat is so dry after that one. Okay, we're almost there. Honestly, even though I'm probably one of the few people that had to look it up and fully understand it, the story itself is actually rather believable. I mean, you know, as believable as it can be, seeing as how it's based on Welsh folklore. But even so, the story is well thought out and detailed and doesn't seem to have any gaping plot holes like a lot of different stories do. I mean, Sonic 2006, anybody? For this, I gotta give it a 5 out of 5. Now, in terms of story, it's probably the best horror game story that I have ever experienced, aside from maybe Layers of Fear 1. That was pretty good, I gotta admit. Well, there you have it, guys. After all of these 5 different sections, the grand total is 23 out of 25, giving it a percentage of 92% on the Kyle's Gaming Studios rating scale. Now, honestly, I think this game definitely deserves all the praise that it's received from both players and critics, and I definitely would recommend you guys to try it out for yourselves. It might feel kind of slow and boring, but trust me, it is well worth the time put into it for the jump scares, the story, and just the overall experience. Well, thank you all so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did enjoy this video, do not forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for new videos posted on a regular basis. Be sure to click the notification bell in the corner so you can stay up to date with all my new content. And click the links down below so you can become a patron on my Patreon page, as well as make a pretty good donation on my PayPal. Believe me, it is not a requirement, but If you guys wouldn't mind helping me out a bit so I can expand my channel, get better equipment and everything, so I can make more awesome videos for you guys, I would really appreciate it. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching, not just this, but the entire series, and I will be seeing you guys in my next series.